but we'll have an introduction video. I'm going to talk about why we do, what our goal is, and then we'll have a video from Will Mancini from the First Impressions Conference that went on last week, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what we're trying to do here at TCC, and then after that, we'll break out into some smaller groups and discuss the different areas that we serve. Security team, you guys will actually have to have a meeting in a couple of weeks once Jason can be back on campus, and he's going to work that out and coordinate that with you to talk about security training specifically for our building. So, Tanner, I'm going to pray, and then you can start the first slide and the recording. All right, let's pray. God, thank you for today. Thank you for, first off, just for the hearts of people willing to come and serve. Lord, I thank you for the gifts and abilities that we have, and I pray that you just go before us as we open up what it looks like to serve guests and the people in our community that are walking through our doors every morning. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.
Hey guys, Greg Atkinson here with Bob Goff, New York Times bestselling author. For anybody that knows me, you know I'm a reader and I love reading books, and one of my writing heroes is Bob Goff. And so, Bob, we are so thrilled to have you be a part of the First Impressions Conference 2020. Welcome.
Oh, thanks a million. Great to be with all of you. And hi, everybody who's watching. I hope what we'll talk about is a couple things that will move the needle in somebody's life.
Yes, that is the prayer. So we are recording this and coming up on the fall of 2020, and there's no lie, no secret that 2020 has been a very difficult year. And with COVID and all that's going on in our world and our country, and we have people tuning in from several countries around the world. But I wanted to ask you, just starting out, you know, something that I talk about a lot when it comes to first impressions and guest services and hospitality is loving our neighbor. And so in this COVID season, in the year 2020, how can we best love our neighbor?
Yeah, what a great question. And I love, it's not lost on me that this question was the question that a lawyer like me posed to Jesus. He said, you know, what's the big commandment? He said, love God with your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I think he said them together because they are like connected at the hip. And so what I try to do is just love people without an agenda. Now, I have an agenda for me. I just don't have an agenda for the people that I'm loving, because you can see that a mile away. It will be something you telegraph with the car you drive, the shirt you wear, the hat you wear, whatever it is, you're telegraphing something. And so I'd say this idea of a first impression is to just be mindful of that. I wear a Red Sox hat. I do that, you know, Greg, because my neighbor who passed away went to heaven. She was a Red Sox fan. And before she left, I told her, I'll wear your hat for the rest of my life and represent the Sox here on earth. But in exchange, every time Jesus walks by you, you need to mention my name. I'm keeping on my end of the deal. I don't know if she is. We'll find out. But when I go through New York, people hiss at me. Because they're evidently rooting for the Yankees. And if they knew I was wearing my neighbor's hat and she was dead, they would feel really bad. And it's just a reminder when we greet people in this first impression that we don't know what's going on underneath their hat. But what we do have some agency over is knowing on what's going on underneath my hat. And so what I'm back to again, I got an agenda for me. I want to keep my eyes fixed on Jesus. I want to love the people in front of me that are a little prickly. And I just, the world, have you noticed it's filled with difficult people? Yeah. Here's the crazy part, people. You're one of them. You are not as lovely as you think you are. You're a little bit difficult around the edges. I know I am. Sweet Maria Goff reminds me of that every once in a while. And so knowing that what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend love without an agenda, and that what we'll do, and it's really guided by Matthew 16, this big Simon Peter moment. Who do you say I am? And some say a teacher and a prophet, and then Simon Peter says you're God. And he said two things. don't tell anybody, which kind of blows the minds of all the evangelicals. I think the idea is to show people, don't tell people. That's the first impression. And then the second thing he followed in the next verse, he said, flesh and blood doesn't reveal these things to you, but the Spirit of God. And so, folks, the pressure is off. The Spirit of God is going to do whatever the Spirit of God is going to do in people's lives. What we need to do is show up ready, palms up, just say, man, I'm just here without an agenda for you, but I got a big agenda for me. And here's the agenda. Love people without an agenda, even the difficult ones, starting with me. Because you can't love them if you don't love you. And I'm not saying we need to give ourselves a big hug, but it wouldn't hurt. But to actually know who's underneath your hat and figure out what it is that is making you do the thing that you're doing. Haven't you noticed, Greg, that people are ricocheting off each other these days a lot?
Yeah.
One word, one phrase, one something, and people just lose their minds. And I think it's just because everybody's on edge. And we're all insecure. This crazy thing is people know me as like a balloon guy and like whatever, but I'm really insecure. Isn't that crazy? What I've learned about myself is the more insecure I get, the funnier I get. And so, like, if I'm like in a really insecure setting, I'd be like, I will just start being the funniest guy ever. And what I need to do is get in touch with that little kid underneath the hat and say, dude, just settle down. Jesus has got this. You don't need to be funny. You don't need to be insecure. But it just takes a little bit of work on our part. A beautiful saying that we can only take people as far as we've gone ourselves. And so I want to go really far. And so as leaders in your community, leaders in your faith communities, I just want you to go a mile deep and figure out what's the thing behind the thing.
Yeah.
So as I watched that, first off, the main reason that I wanted to show that clip, his story, he's talking about why I wear a Boston hat. What's my agenda behind that? He's not a Red Sox fan. Actually, I'm pretty sure Bob might even be from Canada, but he has a neighbor that he's close to. And if you've ever read his book, Love Does or Love Always, I think, or something, there's two different ones. He shares stories, and he literally talks about spending the last months with his neighbor as she's dying. And he tells the story in one of his books about carrying her downstairs and setting her in front of the window at Christmas. And it was Christmas Day, and the entire neighborhood had put together a parade for her. Just walking by, all the families had made cardboard boxes and just things to remind her of how special Christmas is. And to hear him talk about her in that context and to learn, hey, he's wearing a hat not because he loves the Red Sox, but because he loves the person that wore the hat. And we oftentimes are quick to judge. We see someone in a Texas hat, or for me, an Alabama hat, maybe for America, outside of the state of Alabama, for an Alabama hat. We are quick to judge. And there's people that walk through our doors every day that we're quick to judge. But the reality is we don't know their story. We don't know what's going on under the hat. We don't know what's going on in the moment that they walk in here frazzled. We don't know what's going on when we see that their clothes don't match, or maybe they have it all put together. There's a lot of people that come through our doors that have it all put together on the outside, but on the inside, there's a whole lot going on. So what is our agenda? To love people without an agenda, that's what our goal should be. We hear this often, though. We hear this often, and we see it written on walls. And, churches have mission statements, love God, love people. Oftentimes, though, what we don't see is the action behind that. We see the words, and I'll admit, like, I'm a part of that. You hear love people, and you get the eye roll. It's like, okay, it's got to be more than that. You got to do more than that. What's that look like? Like, love people is so vague. But here's the thing. I failed to do that. So when I come in here on Sunday morning, I have to stop and I have to ask myself, what is my agenda? What is my goal? What is our team's agenda? What is our team's goal? See, we can each come up with it with our own answers, and we could put together a really great statement, and all of our answers will be right, and they won't be wrong. But if all of us have different answers, then we're not going to achieve the overall goal. See, that what we want to do is set out to achieve our own goal as a team. Here it is. Here is our team goal as a Connections team: to lead each person on site with an encounter with Jesus by welcoming, informing, serving each individual person. Why is it our goal? Well, because each person needs Jesus. We need Jesus. Each person that comes in here needs Jesus. So this is our goal. Why do we have it? Well, we have it. Tanner, next slide. We have it because we exist. Every person needs Jesus, so we exist to guide them as they begin their worship experience at TCC. We exist to guide them as they begin their worship experience at TCC. That's the why. That's why we are here. That's why we come in at 8 a.m. and we start brewing coffee. That's why we set out signs in the parking lot. That's why we hold the doors. That's why we greet people. It's for this reason. Now, welcome is a word that we all long to hear. Think of the most introverted person that you know in your life. They still want to feel welcomed. They still want to feel like they are loved and like they belong. They might only care to feel that from the person that lives in their house or the person that they are kin to by blood. They might not need 50,000 friends, but they still, every individual person wants to know they have a place and that they belong to something. We were created for community. Our goal is not accomplished by one person or one team or one sermon, or one element of our service. Our goal is accomplished by each of our teams working together to create an environment so that when the person walks in and they sit down in the seats, that they are open, that they are saying, okay, I'm here. Where's Jesus? That is what our goal is. Henry Nouwen said it like this. He said, hospitality is primarily the creation of free space where the stranger can enter and become a friend instead of an enemy. Hospitality is not to change people, but it often offers them a space where change can take place. That's what we're creating, is an opportunity. So this means that Vicky and her children's ministry team, they have to create a smooth and safe check-in process across the street as a parent drops off a child. This means that the greeters must be excited. They must be approachable and on the lookout for people as they walk up. Notice how I didn't say just guests. Our people, how many of you guys have had a bad day on a Saturday, had a bad week leading up to a Sunday, and you're walking in here and you're just like, I'm here. We don't want to get hyper-focused just on brand new guests. We also need to understand that our people need to be ministered to too. We oftentimes need to be ministered to as well. And it happens by all the teams working together. You know, Ashley and her team with the coffee, they need to have fresh hot coffee and snacks ready as people are coming in. Signage in the building needs to be able to provide smooth, clear instruction and direction. People, as they're walking in, they need to know that the building is going to be clean, that the heat is going to be on, that the chairs, there's going to be a chair. I don't know how many of you guys have ever went to a crowded movie theater and you walk in and you're like, because you walk in from the bottom and you look up and it's just rows of seats and you're going, yeah, I'm going to go get my money back. I'll come back to the next one because there's no seat except the one like in the middle and you got to walk over 10 people. If there's not seats available, we need to be on the lookout as a team that's checking people in, that's the connections desk, the coffee team. You're standing there and you're going, hey, there's not many chairs left. You know what? I can't leave my spot, but I can go and I can call someone to me that can go and get it done. We need to look for opportunities where we can create an environment where people can come in here and they can worship. Because here's the thing. No one has gotten to the seat and sat down at this point. Everything I've mentioned is just walking in, finding a parking spot, getting a kid checked in, being greeted. Are they noticed? You can be completely overwhelmed before you ever sit down. And there's things too that we can become blind to. There's things that we can become blind to. We don't see the chip in the paint that's been in the wall for 37 years, or the weird smell that just when we walk in, we're like, hey, we're at church, like I know this smell. We have to be alert for those things. We don't need signage, maybe. Sometimes we think that, well, I don't need signage. I know the 216 building is where the kids go. I know that this is where we have worship. Well, if someone's never been on our property and they're coming in here, they're going to walk in here with their family and they have no idea that their children go across the street. Or they go in over there having no idea, all right, we dropped our kids off. Now where do we go? We have to be alert and aware of those things. And each of us play a role in the guest experience before the service ever even starts. Many of you guys, actually, I think everybody in the room right now has been a parent. And you've had those days that are super stressful, like it's been a good day, you're going to have a fun day, you're going to go to the zoo, and it just takes like one super wet diaper to throw the whole day in a tailspin, or one kid to get sick, or the drink to get knocked over in the car. And as parents, we overreact in that moment. And when we get home, we're sitting down on the couch or we're laying in bed that night and we're going, man, the day was super stressful and I overreacted, and it really wasn't a big deal that drink spilled, but yet I overreacted. We have parents that are walking in here. I can attest to this every Sunday morning. You do your best to get the kids out of the house, and then they grab the K-cup out of the trash can on the way out the door. Or, they end up with their shoes and socks off before they ever make it to the church. So like you just put them on and you wrestled them to get them dressed, and then you get here and their pants are off, and it's like, how did you even do that in a car seat? Those are questions that you're asking. So the mom's trying to throw the kid in. We had this happen the other day. We were at Sam's Club. Elam was sitting in the buggy and he had one leg through the buggy and the other leg was out. And the way he was positioned, he didn't pee in the diaper. He peed right down his leg. And so here we are standing in Sam's Club and we're going, like, there's pee dripping on the floor. The Christmas lights have pee on them. We're just like, well, all right. So, we're trying to like kind of clean it up, but then we go to the bathroom and of course the bathroom's closed because they're cleaning it. So we're going, all right, well, I guess we're leaving Sam's Club. It takes 40 minutes to get to Sam's Club. This is our grocery shopping. We're like, 15 minutes into an hour-long shopping trip. Clearly we're going to have to come back. We're overwhelmed. We think that, we're out of the stage of needing extra clothes. But clearly that's not the case. That's how easy it is for a parent to walk in here overwhelmed and frazzled before they ever get to a chair. They sit down, they're not coming back, or they're definitely, even if they're like, well, I'll come back, they aren't open to hear the message, worship, communion, any other element that's in our service. Their mind is on what just happened to come in and what they got to do to get home. So how can we make those opportunities better for our parents and our families that are coming in? Because if a person becomes overwhelmed before they ever make it into worship, the last thing that's going to be on their mind, like I said, is Jesus. Now, when I think about connections and I think about first impressions or hospitality, I always think of examples of my own experience. Where do I experience hospitality, guest services that are exceptional? Where do I connect with the employees or feel valued as a guest? And there's a few organizations that they pride themselves on this. So I'm going to go ahead and put those on the screen now. You can see here, Publix, Chick-fil-A, Disney, the Ritz-Carlton. I've never been to the Ritz-Carlton, but they make it a priority. Amazon. These companies value their customers. They take a pride in it, so much so that they're willing to spend billions of dollars each year just to make sure that they understand what their customers are struggling with, how that they can improve those areas. When I was in North Carolina, I had a chance to go to the headquarters of Chick-fil-A and do a behind-the-scenes tour, and they literally have a warehouse set up where they'll have an in-room dining room experience, and then they have the entire exterior of the building as the drive-through. And they'll use golf carts to practice. They're constantly practicing. Sometimes you go to a Chick-fil-A and you're like, this Chick-fil-A is totally different than the one across town because, well, it was built a couple years newer, and they've updated it. They're constantly going, hey, how much time do we sit in the drive-through line? How can we better equip our employees? Oh, let's spend $50 million on iPads and take your order right as you get there, and we'll get you through faster. Let's do that. They are knocking it out of the park on their drive-through time, that they don't even have to worry about opening up their dining room and exposing their team members to COVID. They continually do it through the drive-through. And it's crazy, but they put an emphasis on their customer service. So Disney's the same way. Disney's lines are everywhere. I looked up the average park attendance pre-COVID was about 65,000 people a day. This is just Magic Kingdom, so this doesn't include the other 4 parks. The capacity at Magic Kingdom was 85,000. So when I say lines are everywhere, you also, by the way, as parents, you're like, all right, we're gonna go to Disney World, we're gonna go to Magic Kingdom. It costs how much to get in? Yeah, we're getting there before the doors open, and we're gonna be the last ones to leave. So here's how the day goes. Lines are everywhere, crowds are insane, kids are exhausted, parents are financially broke, yet Disney creates magic. You walk out of there and you might be dog tired, but you are going, wow, that was amazing. I'm ready to come back. It's because from everything from their security lines to their parking lot, they're making sure that you are having a good experience, that they value you. That's what it takes for us here to accomplish an opportunity to create an environment to guide people as they begin their experience to worship. We have to be alert to those things. It's no longer just, hey, I'm going to stand at the door and say hello. It's, hey, I want to go outside. Yeah, it might be 30 degrees, but I want to be able to greet that person where they're at. Oh, do they need me to help them carry a diaper bag? Do I need to have an umbrella? I can have an umbrella. I can go out to the parking lot and help them walk in. It's creating an experience that lets them know you matter. Not only, hey, we're glad you're here, or, hey, I'm in the rain because I'm glad to see you and I have an umbrella to help you get in. Which one communicates, we're glad you're here? Your actions communicate louder than any words we could ever speak. So here's what we're going to do. I've got this. I'm going to wrap it up. Tanner, can you put the verse on there, the next verse? So each of you, this is where Peter is talking. He says, each of you should use whatever gift that you have received to serve others as faith stewards of God's grace in its various forms. We're each talented. We each have different gifts and abilities. I'm not very good at fill in the blank, but I know so-and-so is. We put our talents together. It's not one team. It's not Vicky's children's ministry that knocks the home run. It's not Michael's sermon that knocks the home run, that creates opportunities for people to meet Jesus. It's all of us collectively working together that allows people to be willing to open up their ears and their hearts to Jesus. So I've got a quick 10-minute video. This is a guy, his name's Will Mancini. We're going to wrap up with this video, and then I'm going to do a couple of things to talk about specifics with Connections team, and then we will break out into our smaller teams and do a little bit more training there. So Will Mancini's talking about 10 things that impact guest relations.
I want to share how I was converted into intentionality with first impressions. Then what I've learned over the last 20 years working with churches on site every day. And then I want to give you the most important tool I ever created for helping you get breakthrough clarity on first impressions. Well, back in 1993, Bruce Wesley started Clear Creek Community Church in the Houston area. Several years later, he recruited me to come on board, help him build ministries. He was planning to launch me out to do my own church planting venture. Well, it was about 1998. We were running about 500 or 600 people. And I happened to be working in the area of children's ministry at the time. In fact, my ego couldn't handle it. So to save cred, with my ministry buds, I had to ask Bruce to change my title to life development pastor. I couldn't actually handle the children's pastor title, which I confess right now how bad that was. And I'm a huge children's ministry fan. By the way, most people still come to Jesus between ages 4 and 14. So in case you're in children's ministry out there, just a little shout out to you. But back to 1998, I was not preaching this Sunday morning. I was manning the children's ministry area as a good life development pastor does. And I remember a couple coming to our church for the first time. Their name was Bill and Nicole. And as they came for the first time, Nicole was holding a little 1-year-old boy in her hand. His name is Sebastian. And it just so happened, I remember kind of meeting them, welcoming them to the church, and looked at Sebastian and welcomed Sebastian. And it was just kind of one of those moments of saying, hey, glad you're here, right? I hadn't really ever thought about being intentional with the first impression before. So fast forward 7 days. Next Sunday, I'm out kind of on we were meeting at the time in a junior high in the middle school facility. So I'm out on the front porch of this middle school and see Bill and Nicole. I see them back. But I didn't remember their name. But for some reason, I remembered Sebastian. And as they were walking up to the front door of this middle school, it was our rented church facility on Sunday mornings, I just happened to remember Sebastian's name. I reached out, I grabbed his little 1-year-old hand. I said, Sebastian, good to see you again. Welcome to church. Fast forward 6 months, Nicole comes to Christ. Fast forward another 6 months, Bill comes to Christ. Fast forward another 6 months, they both get baptized in our church. Fast forward another 6 months, we're doing a small group leader training. And Nicole is in the training because she wants to lead a prayer walking women's group in her neighborhood. So you just kind of feel this 2-year run of meeting Bill and Nicole at the front of the church. And now I'm in a small group training experience with Nicole. Well, we were having brownies and cookies at a break, and I was just chatting with Nicole, and I'll never forget what Nicole said while we were having snacks at a small group training. She said, Will, I don't know if anyone ever told you this, but we decided to make Clear Creek Community Church our home because of the way you greeted us the second time we came to the church. And it was this jaw-dropping moment. I sat there and continued the conversation in reality, but in the back of my mind, I thought, I never, ever realized how huge of an impact the first impression can be. In fact, I remember driving home from that leader training thinking the first impression makes an internal impact. And I think of every time I champion intentionality with that first impression, I just think we are having an eternal impact or not by how well we leverage that little window of opportunity that happens every morning digitally, every morning at our brick and mortar services, at any events that we do at the church. So now, several years later, I decided not to plant a church, but to plant a coaching and consulting ministry. As the founder of the Future Church Company and as someone who's started lots of different ministries, I've spent the last 2 decades really focusing my life's work on visionary planning and disciple-making culture. Now, in the process of doing significant on-site work, something happens. You get to experience a church for the first time. So because of my conversion, because I prayed to receive intentional first impressions in my life, in that Bill and Nicole story, I decided that everywhere I went, I wanted to add value around the first impression. I didn't actually ever set out to just do that with my life's work, but I thought I always want to add value. So I want to share with you the 10 mind-blowing facts that should fuel your guest ministry, your first impressions ministry, your guest services, intentionality. And I've just accumulated these over the years and just love teaching and training these to church leaders. And then when I wrap up, I want to give you a tool that I really love, and direct you to a place you can download that and use it next week or next month in your training around first impressions. Well, the first kind of mind-blowing fact is that you have more guests than you think. When we actually do the research over the years, we find that in most churches, you're going to have 5 to 8% of people who self-identify as guests. That's from us doing literally hundreds and hundreds of primary research through custom congregational surveys for the churches that we serve. Now, if you take, let's say, a church of 400, you take the bottom end of that 5%, you're going to have 20 guests on a weekend, and you multiply that by 52, you're going to have 1,200 guests on a weekend. If you're a church of 1,200, right, you're going to have 3,600 guests. So, over the course of a year. So when you want to kind of do the math and help people appreciate what a huge kind of bandwidth of souls you're really talking about when it comes to the first impression. And again, that's just based on kind of averages of churches of all sizes that we've seen for people who self-identify as a guest. Well, the second reason you want to be intentional about guests is that your guests are not an average cross-section of people just randomly coming to your church. They represent people who are going through situations that make them more responsive to God. This is absolutely critical. You're talking about people who are moving into your community for the first time, a higher percentage of those. You're talking about someone who maybe just lost a job and they're asking, bigger questions about life. Or maybe they just had children. That is probably one of the biggest things we see. Or maybe they have wayward teenagers, right? And they're going through this turbulence. I remember, one of my evangelism profs in seminary was also a fisherman. And the principle that every fisherman knows is you're most likely to find fish in the boundary conditions where the currents are meeting, where there's transitions in the water. It's the same thing with fishing for souls and finding people who may be responsive to the gospel. So that raises the bar even more on your guest ministry. Well, number 3, your guests are assessing super quickly whether or not they're coming back. We've talked for years about the 11-minute principle. No one's ever pushed back. People would probably say it's even shorter today, but we've always used the 11-minute standard to say your guests are deciding in the first 11-minute window whether or not they're coming back. Now, in a typical church where you have a parking sequence and other things to do, it's not, implausible that they've not even heard the beginning of the worship service yet, and they've already made the decision. And the question is, why is that? Well, it's because they're asking these questions. Does this place, care about me? Are there people here I can relate to? Is there a sense that my presence, even though I'm a first timer, does it matter here? And all those things are being communicated indirectly all the time. And there's a lot of data, right, happening in that first 11 minutes. So again, that just raises the bar. And in each one of these 10 kind of mind-blowing facts just kind of keeps raising the bar on how amazing this opportunity is in our churches. Again, whether that's digital or brick and mortar, it's the same reality. Well, number 4, you're welcoming your guest represents step 1 of the Great Commission. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, you're not having to go out and invest in sending your people or going to the ends of the earth. These are the people that are coming to you. Like, this is the low-hanging fruit for the mission of Jesus. I mean, they have situations where they're just coming to you, so we don't want to fumble the ball when we have that opportunity. Number 5, guests may represent years of prayer, intentional relationship building, and service from your loyal members and church attenders. When I think of this, I imagine my father, and I can remember the first time my dad came to church. I came to Christ when I was in 8th grade. And for the next 12 years, my dad didn't want to have anything to do with church. My mom had a meaningful faith experience. I trusted Christ and, was kind of growing in my faith the way you do in those middle school and high school years. And I can remember my dad went on a 2-week business trip. He came back and he said to my mom, he goes, I'm ready to come to church with you this Sunday. I mean, that was a big event. 12 years of prayer. In fact, I can remember my mom, a tear coming down her eye every Sunday when dad was not with us. And she just longed to have her husband and is sitting in that church pew. Willowdale Chapel in Pennsylvania, outside of Kennett Square area. And I can remember the first time my dad came to the Willowdale Chapel. And you know what's going through my mind? Like, all you're thinking about is, dear Lord, whether it's the preacher, the choir, everybody my dad sees, please don't screw up. This is my dad. I mean, this is my dad. This is our opportunity. And I think, wow, those guests who are coming to your church, they represent that same like deep investment, maybe a decade, like with my dad or more, of prayer and longing for these people to have an encounter with the living God. So we're just raising the bar, but we're not done. Guests will talk about their initial experiences on average 8 to 15 times with other people. And you know what happens when someone has a bad experience, they're more likely to share it. But 8 to 15 times will be the amplifier, will be the force multiplier of whether your guests have a great experience or not in your ministry. Okay, so we'll just keep going. Mind-blowing fact number 7. Serving in the welcoming ministry is a fantastic shallow end of the pool to get people involved. Now, you've got all kinds of ways to serve at your church, but this one really can be a fun place for initial engagement. There's really no reason why you shouldn't have like a great army of people there to welcome others as they come in. And it's just a kind of, I call it the shallow end of the pool. It's really easy to recruit people to this kind of fun ministry area. All right. Now, I love this mind-blowing fact number 8 is that you're actually nourishing a culture of hospitality by having a great first impressions team or welcome ministry. And by that, I mean, it's actually like providing missional training wheels for the church. When the average believer comes into your church, whether they're a new believer, they've walked with Jesus for a long time, having a great welcoming ministry is symbolic of the fact that those who don't know God matter to us. It's that heartbeat of Jesus that leaves the 99 to go seek and search for the one. And you want to have a billboard that is true in the culture of our church. And so I think of it as this missional living training wheels to show off to everybody in your church every time you meet that the most important people to our church are not the staff, they're not the founding members, they're not the biggest givers. They are the people who've not yet walked in the doors of our church. Those are the most important people to our church. And so you want your welcoming ministry to highlight that cultural reality. All right. Now, mind-blowing fact number 9 is this. Let's say you want to build a strong ministry and name any ministry you can name. You want to build a strong children's ministry. You want to build a strong prison ministry. You want to build a strong women's ministry. Like, just keep doing the list. You want to build a strong teaching team. Here's the big idea. Investment into your first impression ministry is an investment into every other ministry in the life of your church. Think about it. Like, this is the front line. This is the top of the funnel, if you will, right? As people mature and as people are launched into ministry, you're only going to capture as many people as come in through the front doors, whether that's a click through or a literal walkthrough. So here's the bottom line. If you want to have a great prison ministry, maybe a future Chuck Colson is going to walk through your doors next week. Are you going to be ready? You get the point. Well, mind-blowing fact number 10 is simply this. We are commanded in Scripture to love strangers. In fact, it's a singular term, the phileoxenia. We should have a brotherly love toward those who are strangers, so those who are far away or coming into our midst. I think of Abraham in the Old Testament. They literally have 4 doors on every side of the tent. They could welcome and had a profound sense of duty and love to the guest, to the stranger, as they would approach the tent from any direction. And today, it's just a pure command. It's in Hebrews, it's in Romans, that we are commanded to love the stranger. How much more clear can you get it? So when you start adding up these top 10 things, it's remarkable how powerful of an investment and intentionality is. It's unbelievable when you consider the eternal impact of the first impression.
All right, so right now what I want to do, I'm going to go over a couple of just housekeeping things specifically for where we're at.